You're listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by NACS. We'll talk about what we see at stores and what the future may hold for our industry.
All right, so we have a fun episode today. Jeff Lenard and I are going to talk to Shawn Stevens, who is the founder of the Food Industry Counsel. And Shawn has a unique role in that he gets to support and defend and all that good stuff, our industry as it pertains to food and also food safety. So welcome, Shawn.
Hey, thanks, Chrissy. Thanks so much. I really appreciate the invitation to be with you today. And, I think, so I'll apologize in advance. I'm a lawyer. I don't like lawyers either. But unfortunately, I've been a lawyer for almost 25 years representing the food industry throughout the United States, including growers, distributors, food manufacturers, national retail chains, convenience store chains, grocery chains, and restaurant chains. So really from, farm to fork. We have worked very closely with every segment in the industry. And in the early days, consistent with your intro, spent a lot of time defending food companies in high-profile foodborne illness cases or other types of food safety type lawsuits. And more recently, I'd say within the last decade and a half, I've been spending a lot more time trying to help companies not have a bad day, right?
Right.
We like to say, make a safer product. We're responsible for the health of the nation, each and every one of us in the food supply. And we serve really as partners with industry, standing shoulder to shoulder on a daily basis, sharing our perspective and learning, trying to make sure that the food that we're manufacturing and then selling direct to consumers is, number one, the best experience they're going to have, but the safest quality food that they're ever going to eat.
Yeah, that, and Dr. Jay Ellingson from Quick Trip, by way of introduction, that's how I met you as well. And he's really good at saying that we're selling food, but we're protecting public health. And so I think that that's a good way to talk about food safety and to get at that piece of it where people like to come out with all the scare tactics and the stats that say X amount of people will get sick, XYZ. But what it really comes down to is protecting public health. And like you said, putting out the best quality, safest products that our industry possibly can. And food service for convenience stores has done nothing but grow and will keep growing. And so that's why, NACS in particular, we've put a huge emphasis on what we can do for our industry to heighten awareness around safe food handling, food safety protocols, what's going on in the regulatory arena, which is probably daunting and mind-numbing at the same time. And, part of that is why we started our NACS Food Safety Forum, which you will be speaking at on October 3rd in Atlanta.
I cannot wait. It sounds like it's going to be a fabulous
event. You last year, so fingers crossed, no hurricanes.
Right. Yes, we were on the eve of the conference. We watched Hurricane Ian take a very sharp turn to the east and ended up punched us real hard right in the face in Cape Coral and Fort Myers Beach. So I had to, unfortunately, head to Florida instead of Las Vegas. But I cannot wait to see you in Atlanta.
Excellent.
So, it's actually a perfect segue to talk about hurricanes, because with hurricanes, you can kind of do things like, hey, I don't want to be involved in a hurricane. I'll move somewhere where hurricanes don't hit. You don't have the option of saying, I'm not going to eat, and that will keep me protected from food safety. It is a part of daily life. You're going to have a couple meals a day. You have to be, so the system for everyone has to work. Second thing I know is, you were joking about lawyers, but I have learned over the years, it's always better to talk to lawyers and heed their advice before the problem, because after the problem, it gets way more expensive and a lot of bad things have already happened. So give us a summary of when you work with clients. Take us through, how do you work with them both before, during, after in any incidents and in keeping things?
So Jeff, and before I kind of dive into the details of how we work with our colleagues, I think there's 2 points that are important to make. Number one, to your point, speaking to lawyers or experts, in advance of having a bad day is always important. I have many colleagues in the industry that have said, Shawn, if I, from a food safety standpoint, if I, as the COO or CFO or CEO of my company, and I had just spent, and it fill in, the number, but if I had just spent, $100,000 today, I would have saved myself $1 million 3 months from now, because it's the investments up front that are going to protect the company and protect the brand. The interventions, the ensuring that you're selecting the right suppliers, and you're partnering with the strongest in the industry. A platoon is only as strong as its slowest runner, and a platoon is only as dry in the case of a hurricane as its slowest runner. So, and I think the reference to hurricanes is really smart. And I'll give you just an example that had a huge impact on me. In the days leading up to Hurricane Ian, and as it looked like the hurricane track was going to, originally it was going to weaken and then hit the upper panhandle and then took a tight turn to the east and struck about Fort Myers Beach. But in the days leading up, I think it was a Sunday, the hurricane struck on Wednesday. We have a neighbor, and they had a friend who was outside I guess it would be the back of the house or the front of the house, wherever the boat was parked. And they had a bunch of tie-down straps and was wrenching down this boat on a lift. And I hadn't met the gentleman, but he said, hey, he introduced himself. I introduced myself. And we had just purchased a property in Cape Coral. It would have been maybe 18 months before this. And never been in Florida, never had a boat in Florida, never sat through a hurricane. And the neighbor said, hey, what are you going to do about your boat? And I said, I don't know. I've got 4 ropes. I'm going to just kind of tie the ropes. And he said, oh, no, because it's not going to be here when you get back. And so here's what I want you to do. He said, run to Home Depot as quick as you can, purchase as many tie-down straps as you can, because they're going to be gone tomorrow or the next day. And he said, you're going to tie it down this way. You're going to lift all the way up. You're going to do the 4 corners. You're going to go across the top of the boat. You're going to do all these different things. And when I give talks, I often use this example in the context of food safety, because food safety is very similar to hurricanes. We're all learning, and we all have different experiences. And some of us have deeper experience because we've been through some difficult times, or we've had some product issues or recalls, and others of us haven't. And it kind of gets this notion that food safety, just like hurricane safety, is not competitive. And we're all on a team. And if we're helping each other, and we're helping our neighbors, and we're helping the companies that are on our left and right, and other suppliers, and from a retailer standpoint, we're helping the companies or vendors that are sending us products that we're serving to our customers, we're going to be stronger, we're going to be better, we're going to be producing a safer product, and we're going to be able to survive those hurricanes when they do come ashore. So I just wanted to point that out, that's really had a pretty significant impact on me, just sort of the analogies that exist. When we work with clients, we're really on the preventive side now. In the early days when we were defending foodborne illness outbreaks throughout the United States, there came a point where we decided we could do better helping, because we represented in the course of litigation, mostly against Bill Marler, representing plaintiffs who were doing pipelines. Bill and I have had hundreds of cases on opposite sides of the V, and probably mostly because of our older age, we get along. I think when we were both younger. And he'll say, when I met Shawn, he was only 12. He's joking. But, now that we're a little older, we tend to, we get along. We've done a lot of joint presentations more recently at various events. And if you listen to what we say, a lot of what we say is, we use different words, but it's very similar. It's food safety advocacy. I'm a partner with industry, helping industry do a better job. And, our practice shifted 20 years ago from, more foodborne illness defense litigation into what can we do to help companies decrease, we'll never close it, there's no such thing as zero, but decrease their risk exposure window. We want to share the mistakes that companies have made so they're not repeated, but also share the great things that companies have done so they can be repeated or embraced. And we spent, so we spent a lot of time. I personally do a lot of speaking at events, talking about the importance of food safety advocacy, the mistakes that companies sometimes make when, producing food. And then on a more intimate basis with our clients, here's the real deal. We view ourselves as a bookshelf in the office as a book on the bookshelf in our clients' offices. So we'll open up an engagement and we're their lawyers forever. And we're always in the background. We don't charge a retainer unlike other law firms. We're on call. And if our colleagues have a problem, they can pick up the phone 24/7. We'll help them navigate through that problem. And then we may not speak for a year, right? But something comes up or there's a question. We help our clients with crisis management, recall management, commercial litigation, food safety litigation, commercial on the food safety side and quality side, contract review, labeling, regulatory compliance, helping navigate FDA inspections when the regulators show up in the lobby unexpectedly, USDA inspections. So, anything that really touches food, we're involved. And maybe 10 years ago, I started calling myself a food safety consultant and lawyer because we really are consultants first.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you mentioned Bill. So this is our 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. So Darren Detweiler is also going to be speaking at the Food Safety Forum. He's going to kick it off, and then he's going to do a workshop towards the end. So everyone comes full circle at some point in the food safety community.
Yeah, and I would say if you have a chance to get there, it's going to be worth your while. When we hear from folks like Darren, who lost a child to a foodborne illness, what really struck me was that these stories are real. They do happen. And one of the mistakes I think we make is we're, leading companies and we're trying to, grow the business, make profits, because that's really why we exist, right? We often, or sometimes we can sort of maybe lose sight a little bit of, what we regard as the theoretical is in fact real. And, if you ever had a loved one or a relative or somebody close who, unfortunately may have been diagnosed with cancer. I lost my mother to cancer. I had a son with leukemia, right? So it's close to my heart. But it's, food safety in many ways is very similar, where we all hope we're not going to have a huge food issue or a food product issue or an employee issue or a norovirus outbreak. And it's sort of the theoretical. And the advice I like to give is, we go to the doctor and we get checkups, right, to make sure that we don't have a disease. And food safety is very similar. We have to, our food safety folks, our food scientists and the regulatory folks, there are doctors, right, our primary care physicians when it comes to the things that can go bad inside of not our bodies, but our food facilities or our restaurants or our convenience stores. And it's really important to routinely check up with them. And then when they give us advice, to listen, right? Because they're going to keep us alive and protect the brand.
Yeah, your analogies, hurricanes and the medical field, I think resonate because when you think about if you ever go through a health crisis or a loved one goes through a health crisis, you listen to whatever the doctor says as if every word is absolute. And you have enormous trust that they know what they're doing and they're communicating it to you with the proper language. It's so trust-based. That's actually also what the food safety business is. We trust the people that we buy food from, wherever it is, whether it's at the retail level, whether it's at a restaurant, whether it's further up the chain. And it's also something that Quick Trip, and when we talked about Quick Trip with a K in lacrosse, based on lacrosse, it is all about trust, because even if there's an issue, there's no amount of money that can make trust come back once you've lost it. So true.
So true. And I love how you've embraced the word, Jeff, trust. We tend to have in the supply chains a resistance to sharing information sometimes, or if like maybe somebody made a mistake and dropped a pen into into a mixer, a bowl chopper, and now we're seeing complaints of the plastic, and we're, part of us is like, boy, if we have to make that phone call and tell our customer that we've got to recall this product, we might, lose the customer, or they could go elsewhere. And what I found over the years is it's actually the opposite, which is when we have the type of relationship where we can reach out and immediately call our customer without hesitation and say, listen, here's the issue. Let's work through it together. And our customers are telling us, the retail folks are telling the manufacturers, listen, we want you to tell us immediately if there's an issue so that we can identify it, contain it, and then we all move on, right? Because our goal isn't, the sales that are coming tomorrow. Our goal is the sales we're going to have 15 and 20 years from now as great partners. And, it's like seeing the forest through the trees. So it's really powerful when companies, rather than sort of resisting that information share, and instead embrace it and say, we are going to go out of our way to build trust. And when our supplier hears from us, we got an issue, but here's what we did, and we're sending information, they have requests, and we're, they're keeping them informed. What the takeaway from that is, that was a great experience with these guys. We have a lot of respect and trust in not only them, but their culture, but also moving forward their products.
Yeah, and I think you're touching on the food safety culture piece as well, which is, it is a little buzzy around the food safety world right now, and the FDA certainly, been looking at it with its 4 pillars. NACS has been working on a model with Lone Jesperson of Cultivate, and we hope to have our convenience industry specific food safety culture model, a global model, out into the world within the next year. And it is those behaviors that you're talking about, right? It's empowering your teams to do the right thing, and the transparency that it takes, and that, so nobody feels that they can't say that the pen dropped in the mixer. It's like, all right, time out. We dropped a pen. Let's stop and course correct as quickly as possible, because that's the behavior that, the employee is comfortable exhibiting. Because, and, when you mention companies like Quick Trip, they had the benefit of having that culture being passed down from the top. So they have, the top down piece to it. A lot of companies don't have that advantage. And when we started building out the model, we found that a lot of companies were, and I'm talking about convenience store companies, were in the kind of that reactionary phase. And, hopefully as time goes on, we can get folks can move into that phase where we're doing the right thing. Our behaviors are good. We're seeing what we want to see, and we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think we're, I call this the food safety revolution we've been on really since Jack in the Box, and it's been a lot of individuals who have played a role in that food safety revolution. From the Bill Marlers to the Darrens to the Jay Ellingtons. And one of the things that I've seen Quick Trip with a K in lacrosse be successful at is very early on, the company made a decision that they wanted to put a lot of time, effort, and resources into selecting employees, not just hiring whoever was willing to work, but rather selection. And a lot of time is spent in using the interview process in a way to try to find people that have good integrity, they're caring, they're kind, they're honest. The question typically asked is, what did you do in the last week to make somebody's life better? Right? And the soliciting responses, it kind of helps identify those people. And, they say it best, if you're surrounded by those people, your culture is inherently going to be one that's honest and with good integrity. And it's a culture where the people are going to be running the operation. The operation isn't going to be running the people. And there's less chance that the programs and policies aren't going to be followed because you have people who will feel guilty if they don't, right? Right. They've been very successful, I think. And in some cases, in organization, we can't do that because there isn't the workforce, to fill all the positions. But I think if we can think about it kind of through that lens, we're looking for a particular type of person because that person is consistent with the culture that we want. And you're right, it is a little bit like amorphous. Well, what does that really mean? But I think we all know like the types of people that we'd want to surround ourselves with, and the good, honest, and people with integrity. And I think it may go a long way if we try to look for those types of individuals and then reward them, right? And helping them do the best possible job they can, and making sure we're giving them the tools. I do think this culture, as we move forward, culture will have a very tremendous impact, a positive one on food safety. But to your point, I think the struggle we're on right now, or the journey, is how do you define it?
Right.
Once you define it, how do you put it in place? And the biggest impediment, I think, is in all of the countries who are still in that low culture maturity level. Very many of them believe they have a very strong food safety culture. And it's this misperception, this mistaken perception, that will prevent them from sort of admitting that I've got a problem and then, putting resources into fixing it. So a lot of brilliant minds are working on the solution to that, but I see that'll be a challenge, sort of self-critiquing and being able to say, you know what, maybe we don't have the best food safety culture. Maybe we, do need some extra help.
Yeah. And there's definitely a far cry from, one size fits all, especially when it comes to convenience stores. So,
right. Absolutely.
And when you see a regulatory agency start to dive into things like this, it's certainly, we want to be ahead of it. We want to go ahead and get where our industry is comfortable and where they want to be. So it's like you said, it's a journey.
Absolutely.
And related to that journey, we're only as good as our latest meal served, our latest testing, our latest everything. But is there anything in all your experience, just thinking about the image of our industry or the image of the food industry overall, that people just get wrong? That they just think that we are not performing at a high level? Is there something that needs to be corrected that is going very well, that just people need to be more aware of, the general public?
Yeah, and I think about the public, one of the things that we're seeing happening is increasingly, and a lot of this is just my opinion, but increasingly it appears that the media and consumers are expecting a more sterile, maybe even an aseptic, completely safe product. And when we're talking about products like, Quick Trip's moved into raw meat, in their convenience stores, like raw chicken or ground beef, which, inherently there's a warning on it required by the federal government that says if you don't handle it properly, you might get sick because there's bacteria in here. And there does seem to be a little bit of a disconnect between consumer education and the realities of food safety. So, I would like to see, I've always been an advocate of FDA and USDA doing more to promote consumer education. We have products that are ready to prepare or ready to cook, and then, products that are ready to eat. Why can't, that be part of just the regular discourse amongst consumers? And yet we kind of hide behind this, FDA and the regulators many times are saying, well, they're blurring lines between ready to eat and ready to prepare. So I think from a consumer perspective, there is an expectation of a more sterile product. And when we look at, if we look at sort of the convenience store sector, historically, those were not places where consumers would associate with some, there were some exceptions, but with, a nice, wholesome, warm, holiday meal, right? Mm-hmm. And so we're now moving to a place where the options are so broad. There's so much, to select from when we think about food products that are available for sale. A lot of A lot of locations are now preparing food and serving the warm food and the hot meals. And so I do believe very strongly that quality and safety go hand in hand. So as safety improves, quality improves. Workers are more careful. They're taking a little extra time. The presentation of the meal is going to look better. Things aren't just being thrown together and it's just chaos, right? And when quality improves, the same is true. Safety also, you see a correlation and increase in safety. When quality begins to decrease and we start seeing consumer complaints, and the sandwich I received was like the bun was upside down, or there wasn't any meat on it, or whatever the case may be, that's probably a reflection that the food safety practices in the back of this house are pretty bad. So one of the things I like to do when we're vetting suppliers, or we're looking at various, if it's a retail location, is, are we seeing a lot of quality complaints? And if we're seeing a lot of quality complaints, it tells me we might want to pull back the curtains a little bit and dive into the safety and see, if there is an opportunity there for some additional education or additional resources to be directed in that direction. But it's really interesting to see kind of the correlation between the two. So I think is we put more time into safety, in the convenience store sector, we're going to see that quality increase, and it begins to leapfrog. Where suddenly you're like, why would I go to a grocery store, to buy whatever, a meal kit? I'm going to the convenience store. Why? Because it's convenient, and I get the quality, and I get the safety, and it's amazing.
Well said. So we're going to wrap up here for a second and just plug you one more time as one of our speakers at our next Food Safety Forum taking place October 3rd, co-located in Atlanta at the NACS show. And if anyone's interested in registering, it's at convenience.org. And Shawn, thank you for coming on and sharing your expertise with us. And we hope to have you on again soon.
It's awesome to see you, and I can't wait to see you in Atlanta.
It'll be fun.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.